law, I'm supposed to introduce the chair I hold by law. So just read it. It is a strategically focused knowledge and resource intervention into the higher okay? So I'm funded by the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the rest, you can read it, huh? Okay? Okay? Oh, UNISA, ha, ha, ha. Huh? Okay? We are getting on. Now, because our experience demands it, the coming together opens our ears to each other. We want to create safe spaces where we can network with others, share learnings of all kinds. Of course, we value solidarity, and by our nature, unity is the central pillar of the feminine. The regeneration of the continent is always on our mind. But we have to understand that the 20th was the century of the woman's liberation. The 21st century, that of her freedom. Ourselves is an act of sovereignty of the body, but also to realize that freedom is an act of spirit. Women obtain the right to think. We know how we should size our minds in relation to our bodies. We didn't know how to size up our minds in relation to our bodies. In our ardent search for justice, of our spaces in this crucial issue, awareness of our freedom brings with it a consciousness of our duties. Every right that we obtain links us to the other obligations. The entry of women into the city or the modern certainly involves us in the modern political order, which we had actually despised as male-dominated, isn't it? But the entry of women into the city or the modern certainly involves us in what we have despised. Isn't it true? Think about it. Think about it. It is our right to make it better for all. to several questions. What is the feminine way of articulating the common good? Actually, we want to be leaders, But what is our way of articulating the common good? Knowing that the common good and common well-being is neither feminine or nor masculine. Hello? Eh? You get me? Common good and common well-being is neither feminine or masculine. So what are we talking about in this gathering, for example? When we have to transition from submission into responsibility, we find ourselves caught in a time warp. Two histories, two visions coexist in our bodies. It coexists in the contemporary woman, the domestic self and the political. And we experience it as duality. And yet, it is what makes us so powerful. You get me? So, this duality that is experienced as a handicap or an incoherence is the Western mindset, and Patrick would call it. It is almost a juxtaposition. In this juxtaposition, in which the past and the present role of woman is brought out, it is in this moment that the secret of a woman's humanity lies. Because when we bring out this juxtaposition in public, we carry with it the destiny of our era, which tradition and modernity, in which tradition and modernity are confronted. So, what do we mean creating a value-based ecosystem? Let us think of our continent. Now, our continent is neither feminine nor masculine, isn't it? You cannot go to hate the AU as a feminine. No, you have to think of all the well-being of Africa's citizens. So let me turn it another way around. If the 20th century was the century of African political independence, I believe that the 21st century is the century of Africa's reclaiming of human agency and of her status in world citizenship as not as subject, not as object. The 21st century will be one in which the political freeing of the continent from various strands of colonial control is an act linked with the attainment of political sovereignty transforms and metamorphoses into being free is a creative act of the spirit. Yet, awareness of the spirit of our time, our generation, our continent, and of being free as a creative act of the spirit takes us far beyond the cries of reparation and claims of the injustice against a historical experience that was cruel, actually, but in some instances, actually evil. It goes beyond the dictates of modernity and enlightenment, in which all nations of the world are locked into the grids of the European experience, to quite a different place, in which that freedom in the 21st century now meets the requirement of common good and demands of common well-being, of new futures of a different kind. In other words, the key question for Africa is neither feminine or masculine. In my mind, is precisely how active and fully knowing human agency is to be realized in an ethically cognizant dispensation. Africa must therefore weigh carefully its methods of transcending the realms of that bondage. She must go beyond naming what she's fighting against and to courageously name what he or she is fighting for. It is therefore Africa that in transforming the contours of its struggles from archaic resistance to domination holds the key to the world's future. To conclude, much will depend on how we articulate ourselves out of the experience of humiliation suffered in the hands of colonialism, apartheid, and of patriarchy, and make sure we avoid adding to self-perpetuating cultural cycles of violation and vindication, which would seem to say, I have the right to be angry and make others suffer forever because someone has hurt me in the past. That will not work. I tell you, that will not work. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Catherine Odora-Hokas. Perhaps we are going to start from that point. The question of I have the right to make others suffer, to be angry and make others suffer. In the context of value-based leadership, what are the kind of specific examples you can give us, the ethical values that drive your leadership on a daily basis, and how you live them, how you espouse them? Let me start with you, Dr. Mankera-Rangeri.
I think we've been given a very powerful foundation for this panel discussion. The revolutionary platform that has brought us here from so many different parts of this continent to redefine the Africa we want to live in. And I want to even raise the question here. We must be very careful about being hooked into the discourses that come from elsewhere. The fourth industrial revolution assumes that the first revolution was in Europe. There was a second revolution in Europe. There was a third revolution, Europe and America. So this fourth industrial revolution completely discounts the first human civilization, which was here. This is where it all started. So as we engage with the so-called fourth industrial revolution, let's remind people that Africa is not only the cradle of humanity, it is also the cradle of the first civilization. And so we are bringing to this fourth industrial revolution the values of humanity. The I am because you are, and in that way, we can create a more sustainable world which understands that I only succeed to the extent that I enable others to succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Maria. Now, that's a very important point. You are speaking to the issue of how do we conduct ourselves as leaders, the kind of ethical values, the kind of value system we should espouse. Because as leaders, what the values that we embrace is automatically transmitted to the people, to our children, the people we lead, the people we live with in the communities. So, Fatima, what does it mean for you to lead ethically, to have ethical values?
I want to reflect, particularly for my sisters who are not from South Africa. I live in a country with a very radical constitutional framework, a world-class Bill of Rights, but all of those presupposes a set of very progressive values. If you read our constitution, it assumes values of equality is prevalent. The Ubuntu we speak about, it assumes that that is in abundance in our society. And the reasons why women experience the scale of violations at the extent that we do in my country is because of the disconnect between what we have on paper and what lives in real life. And part of the biggest failures in our post-apartheid era, in my belief, is a failure to take control of shaping values in our society. So I often get approached by African other organizations asking us to share with us the laws we have on domestic violence and so on. And I want to caution, I say those laws are important, but the bigger project that shifts societies radically is that values project. Now we know NGOs are very good at it. That's the kind of work we do, but we do it at very small scale. So on our advocacy agendas, there's got to be a challenge to our states to take on value-shaping projects that make real notions of equality as a value. Why are VIP sections in our conferences so normal? Because in our societies, besides the economic inequality, the values of inequality, the notion that someone is very important, and even in some of the conferences, you can go to trade union conferences in South Africa and there can be a VIP section. So not only are you very important, you are very, very important. And what does it say to the rest of us who are not in that queue, who don't have a VIP badge? So for me, I think as the feminist movement, that is what we need to do. We need to take on this project. We need to say, challenge our governments to take control of all that is available to us, including our state broadcasters. If you switch on SABC, the sexist nonsense that we are subjected to every day, it's not a surprise that patriarchy is normal, because every time you switch on the TV, that is what they tell us. It's normal that men are in control of women and women are subjugated to that. So we should learn from our communist brothers and sisters who have done a much better job of this, taking control of state broadcasters, or taking control of education, and saying we are going to embark on an active project of shaping values. I go back to my home where I grew up on the Cape Flats. I feel sad for my nieces because they've not been exposed to the language of patriarchy. They suffered in the same way that I did 30 years ago in school. But there's no one that has disrupted the narrative. So in the same way that we thought it was normal then, that is being reproduced. The difference is that my gift was that I grew up in an era where there was a liberation struggle in place. So our exposure to that allowed us to think about another set of values. But today, the youth only is exposed to the market. So I want to conclude by saying that the danger of a post-apartheid South Africa, and I suspect the same challenge that most other African countries are facing, is that our values are shaped by capitalism. Capitalism is about individualism, it's about greed, it's about looking out for yourself, it's about stepping on anybody to get to the top. So we shouldn't be surprised that those are the prevailing values in a country. If a government gives up that space and says, we give you control to shape values in a country, then that will be the outcome. So I listened to the Telkom guy. I think it's brilliant that they're doing this. But who are they gathering intelligence for about us? What are they going to do with that information? Are they going to use that information to make money of us? That's very certainly what will happen. So the other point of accountability is to call these corporations in, to call Facebook in, to call Telkom in this instance and say, how do we use your technology in service of our agenda, an agenda that's radical? It's about transforming a society and holding people accountable. I'm going to stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. So you're speaking into the issue of technology. We are in the fourth industrial revolution and we cannot do away with technology. I would like to quote Nana Ngobesi, chairperson of Zanele Mbeki Development Trust. In her opening statement yesterday, she said that African women cannot live lives that always look backwards. We need to see the possibilities of the future. Technology is a powerful enabler, but technology has no value system. We need to teach our African values to our children before they get lost. We have to be clear on how we do not lose our Ubuntu, our personhood, and our unique ability to see other humans as human beings. And that's what Dr. Ramperi was also trying to allude to. Within that context, Mildred, I would like to pose that question to you. What are the kind of new value leadership propositions we need to begin to think about?
Wow. Thank you very much. May I just begin by affirming this panel and the power and the wisdom and the experience in this panel. I will start with the honor I feel today to sit in the panel with Dr. Rampele. I met her when I was a young girl in Nairobi. She cannot remember. But in the room where she was talking about education of the girl child, right there, they transformed the lives of South Sudanese refugees who had lost all hope of education. Dr. Rampele does not remember, but I have come here shaking to my wits that she is here, and I am so honored to have met you here today, ma'am. I am so honored. I am equally honored to have met Mama Zendele. We kiss her feet for this. We just have to kiss her feet. We just have to kiss her feet. There is nothing else we can say about how to affirm her. We just need to do that. I want to acknowledge each and every one of you. You are walking in a room of greats. I couldn't believe when I saw Gertrude Mongela. I spent years writing about this woman without meeting her. For 20 years, we called her Mama Beijing. She gave us the dreams to dream that another Africa is possible. And so mama, nilipokuona, nilishukuru sana, nilifurahi sana. Tunakushukuru sana. Asante mama, asante. So I give thanks to all the mothers that I see. My mothers are here, I have seen them. My sisters are here, I have seen you. My daughters are here, I have seen you. We give you thanks because this continent needs you. And now very quickly, to get into how Professor Hoppers has put our minds into very fast running mode with her opening remarks. How else can we put it? Ladies and gentlemen, I say that we cannot unpack this issue without looking at us African women in two aspects. I call it the wisdom of the placenta. I think we have to just struggle and look at it that way. The placenta that you are connected to when you're born, and the placenta that you connected to someone else when you gave forth life. Can we start from unpacking the wisdom of the placenta so that the African woman can see her place in this world of technology in the fourth revolution? I urge, ladies and gentlemen, we work, as Femnet, we work in 47 African countries. We are working in all the 5 sub-regions in this country. In every region that we go, we meet women who are us. We speak the same language. We go to the Francophone, we go to the Lusophone, we go to the... we speak the same language, the language of the placenta, yet we don't know it. We don't bring it forth. And so I give challenges as we speak, that first and foremost, I challenge you to think about where your placenta was buried when you were born. We talk to our young sisters and they say, but I was born in the Johannesburg maternity hospital, they threw it there. I say, that is true. But you need to go back to your mother and ask your mother where her placenta was buried when her mother gave birth to her. And if she's not there, then ask your grandmother where her placenta was, because we Africans know that where the placenta is buried roots you. So history and understanding who we are, where we come from, and why we are. That is extremely important, because if we do not understand the wisdom of the placenta and where it is buried, then we are doomed as African women, because that is the beginning of thinking as African women as we actually take up the challenges that we see. We appreciate that today, in the midst of all the 1,000 women attending this amazing, amazing groundbreaking dialogue, we have both the grassroots and the rooftops women. It has connected all of us. There has to be no distinction between you and I. The placenta has no race or color. It has no status. It has no status. It has no class. It has no tribe. So when we look at it that way, my sisters, we will begin to understand that when a child is raped in Libya and a child is raped in Cape Town, we both cry. Because the cry of the child being violated, the woman being violated, is the same. And so technology has come. And this technology cannot be policed. And it keeps diverting, it keeps changing, and it's vibrant, and it's connecting things, and it's making our world totally different. How do we do it with the soul of the African woman, the soul of the African woman's placenta?
Thank you. Thank you, Mildred. Thank you, Mildred. You are bringing out the aspect of understanding who we are, knowing our roots. I would like to pose to you, Sister Daya, the issue of self-awareness, self-management, emotional intelligence. Because in our workplaces, in our communities, we do interact and observe leaders, the way they are applying themselves. They can have the highest intellectual horsepower. However, the emotional intelligence is lacking. How they dismiss the young ones, how they dismiss the sisters. What kind of thinking should we begin to have in terms of self-awareness, in terms of empathy?
Good afternoon, and it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be here this afternoon. I think in a way to really begin to look at that our response to the world around us and even our values that we hold is very directly connected to the sense of self that we hold of ourselves. And from a spiritual perspective, we hold two kind of identities of ourselves. One is what I would call the physical identity, the identity that's based on how we, the context we find ourselves in, be it our cultural, national, religious, race context that we find ourselves in. And often that sense of identity we hold of ourselves based on these circumstances that we find ourselves in begins to influence how I have a sense of self-worth in that sense. So I see myself and the other as different, and because of the difference that I see, I begin to evaluate and measure myself on that basis. So this is just one level in terms of the context we find ourselves in. But we all know and we can all relate to that we more than our contexts. We are more than even our histories in a way. That we are beings, spirit, and as my sister put it, the placenta, which is not defined by these physical elements. Then that consciousness that we are within, it's the power that we have within ourselves. When we begin to see ourselves from that deeper innate level, that's free from the influence of all these labels that we've attached ourselves to, we begin to reconnect with what is universally in each one of us. We all know what peace is in our hearts. We all know what love is. We all know what joy is. We all know what true power is within ourselves. And when we can begin to reconnect and re-identify with that innate self, what it helps us to do, it gives us a new way of seeing our self-worth. That my self-worth is not how I compare against the other. My self-worth is who I am and what I am as spirit, as consciousness. And so this foundation of self-respect is what I feel then begins to anchor me. And when I feel anchored, then it helps me to engage with the other from this inner security. Because I feel the lack of emotional intelligence is actually an insecurity within the self. You know, it's when you see a behavior that's aggressive, it's actually showing powerlessness, not real power inside. So just beginning to create this deeper foundation of I am because what I am within. I am the spirit within. I am this consciousness within. I am this amazing energy within. As I begin to create that foundation and deepen that sense of self-worth, what it does is then it enables me to engage with respect for the other and help the other to emerge that from within themselves. And I find that one of the key things is because we may have this understanding, however, we've internalized the patriarchy, we've internalized the prejudices that we faced without realizing it. So subconsciously, sometimes we still react from it. And so it's so crucial and important for leadership going into the future that we actually cultivate a practice to pause and look at the self with deep honesty and to really ask the self that not just the intention, but what's the energy with which I'm coming from and I'm responding from. And so it's this constant checking of the self. But within that process, I find to do it with compassion for the self, which is key.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister. You are raising the issue of consciousness. There's a saying that goes, the consciousness that got us in this mess isn't the consciousness that will get us out of this mess. We need expanded consciousness with which to meet the challenges that lie before us. In what specific ways can we raise this consciousness to transmit these values to our youth, the ecosystem that we're talking about? Professor Catherine, would you like to take that up?
First of all, you know, I'd like to share this with you. Remember, the wound, your wounds, is where light enters you. Your wound is where healing light enters you. So if you are without wounds, you walk like a zombie. Because you don't absorb anything. But remember, your wounds are valuable because the wounds makes you remember the past and bring it into the present. As I commented in my opening, is that the way we go on articulating ourselves into the present and then into the future matters. You get me? Next.
Yes. That's a good one. Dr. Ramperi, I'm circling back to the issue of the real ethical values that you yourself, as a leader, subscribe to and live out. What are the specific examples that we can learn from? And I think that is the common theme that should spread up to you, sister. How do you lead ethically on a daily basis so that we can learn from you?
Leaders have to start by leading themselves. If you don't embrace and live the values you claim to be leading by, we will soon find out. And so we went through, in the late 60s, early 70s, a very painful process of recognizing the wounds of calling ourselves non-Europeans, non-whites. And then you wake up and you say, but how do you begin to challenge a system that you still use as a standard of that which you are not? And of course, once we got that, we were like, a bulldog, once it gets that bone, we don't let. We were proud, we are black, we are proud, and we're going to not be fighting against apartheid, but establishing a new way of being in which brings the humanity of Africa as the standard. Of course, it didn't take long to realize that I was not only black and proud, I was a woman. There came the problem. Because my male colleague said, Mampila, why now you are dividing the struggle? I said, okay, show me how you divide me between the woman and the black person. And that, it was a struggle within us as an activist community, a very small one, but we clarified those issues so that we're able to lead with the values of Ubuntu, not as rhetoric, but as I see you in me. So I could, as a doctor, go and live with poor people and not feel that I've come down to, I need a VVIP. No. I learned the language of isiXhosa from the mamas from Emakhosi. And I became part of that milieu. And so the values that we are talking about, the ethical values, are the values that you would know from the placenta, that in fact, this is how you were brought up. And this is how you are bringing up your children. But this is how you lead. And you must every day check, because that's where emotional intent. Check, have I deviated? And if so, take steps to go back.
Thank you, Dr. Ramperi. Fatima, your thoughts? What are the specific examples? What are the ethical values that drive your leadership?
Well, I think for me it's about the consciousness about what those values are and not deciding on that on your own in a corner, I think part of leadership accountability is to declare that values to your comrades, to surround yourself with sisters who will hold you accountable to the things that you claim to be. And for us to acknowledge that at some point we are going to make mistakes. If you are committed to a project of women's dignity, women's rights, we are swimming in a sea of patriarchy every day. The world is teaching us every day to devalue ourselves. So it's not like I can wake up in the morning and declare myself a feminist. Every day it's a project of recommitment to that value. Because as soon as I leave the house, or even before we leave the house, we are confronted by patriarchal values. So it's not a linear struggle. We know all radical struggles is one step back, two steps forward. You know how it goes. But the point that I'm making is that, unfortunately, it's not an easy life. I look at some people who choose not to embrace that struggle, and I envy their easy lives. I think if you're committed to a certain, realizing a certain world that is very different from the world that we live in now, it's an ongoing process. Yeah. And we never have it handled, unfortunately, which is why conversations like this is so important. We listen to each other, I listen to my fellow panelists, and I get re-inspired again by this dream we have of a world that's very different from the world that we live in now. And I recommit again. But as I'm saying, the point is accountability. And I want to say something about Ma Mbeki. I don't know if she's in the room. Maybe it's best if she's not, because then I can gossip about her wonderfully. The reason why we love her so, I didn't know her when she was the first lady of my country. The media had no spotlight on Mam Mbeki. I got to know her through AWOD and through the Zanele Mbeki Trust. And every person that I speak to about her speaks about how she embodies values of humble leadership. If at the conference she stands in the queue with all of us waiting for tea, she doesn't get up in a conference and say, I'm the first lady, listen to me. And this is the kind of leadership that's in short supply in our country. We hear people sitting on platforms and speaking about it, but we don't see it role model in their conduct. And part of the challenge is that we are surrounding ourselves by people who don't call us out. So we must have around us people as women who love us fiercely, but also call us out when we contradict ourselves. And we have to be willing to know that that contradiction will come. I catch my own patriarchy on a regular basis. And the issue is not to be embarrassed about it. The issue is to say, now I've learned something and now I will endeavor to do better. So for me, it's that combination. We can't quietly tell ourselves this is what we're going to be, because we will contradict ourselves. And if we have that accountability around us, then it's different. If you will allow me to say one last point. One of the crises in our country is that we've got very high levels of women's representation in parliament and in leadership. But those women are completely unaccountable to us. So I'm coming back to the question of accountability. And in the immediate post-apartheid era, and I apologize to my other African sisters for my South African bias. This is the country I know, so I can share those examples. But in that immediate post-apartheid era, we created a direct mechanism of accountability between all women in parliament and women's movements in the country. That is gone today. The women who sit in parliament represent only their political parties. And if you assume that the political parties represent our interests, which we are not convinced of, then you can relax. But part of the challenge is to say it doesn't matter, even if we have 80% of women in parliament tomorrow, are our lives going to be better? There's not evidence of the fact that women who sit there necessarily represent our interests. So one of the practical challenges to us, we fought really hard for representation. Representation is important because we want young girls to switch on Parliament TV and see that it's possible to be a minister. It's possible to be a president, but we want the kind of ministers, MPs in Parliament that represent our aspirations, our dreams and our, which we don't have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. I'll circle back to you. You are bringing out a very sensitive and hot topic there. I'll come back to it. But I still want to take it through for Mildred to share your practical examples, how you lead ethically.
So practical examples to me have been displayed by Mama Zandele. Leadership to many is not about you, it's about them, who you lead. The individualistic nature of leadership pushes us to forget the servants who we are called upon to serve. So Mama Zandele pushes the fire from behind, creates the space, and fizzles away. It's not about her. It's about the women. Leadership, I think if you don't know what you stand for, then you will fall for anything. So I love that this program begins with self-reflections internally, so that you can ask yourself difficult questions as women. What do I stand for? What's my ideology? Where do I want to go? Whom am I leading? How am I leading? What should I do? Those reflections are extremely important, so that then you get the answer as to the kind of leadership that you are. Mama Zendele, I tiptoe around her ideology, because for us human beings, the four quadrants of how human beings are can call you to be the first quadrant, that is the I. Those of one who wants to say, it's me, Mildred. So I can pass and you say, that's the Mildred. There is. The second quadrant are the people who say, it is we. You tell them, come, let's go this way. They say, no, 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 I'm waiting for the women. Call the women. You say, come this way. You say, no, 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 no. Where are the people? We have to go with the people. The third quadrant, the example I give, is the power of total shutdown. Action people. They said, no, it's wrong, jump on, let's do it. We don't care, we gotta push it, we're doing it. Total shutdown, we followed you from the start to the end, and we pushed with you, we understood. And I know we kept saying, we see you, we feel you. But the fourth part of the quadrant then is the systems people. We need systems people and structures people, who when you come and say, Total Shutdown wants to go to the streets tomorrow, and the accounts department or finance says, that's not in the budget. Or they say, but how are you going? Who's structuring? Who's coming? But that is totally okay, ladies. It's totally okay, because we need to merge the four so that our leadership in the struggle can work. But after we identify the four and know the who can speak, the who pulls community, the action ones who roll up their sleeves and go out, the systems one who make sure everything in the ground is okay, we need it so that we win it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mildred. You're speaking to the issue of the ecosystem. How do we pull all these synergies to make sure that as leaders, we are tapping into the potential, we are tapping into the resources we have within our disposal to get things done, to make things happen? Sister, you are in the space of advancing spirituality, making sure that people are self-aware. How do we begin to ensure that leaders should always pause and reflect how their leadership practice is making an impact for the people that follow them, the people that they're supposed to serve?
Yes, I think the key thing about being a leader is that it's not just a position, but it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to serve. And the key thing is that when you're coming from that right place of your deeper awareness and also from a highest set of values, it's reflected in the people you serve. So on one level, you begin to see that in my engagement with others, are others feeling empowered? You know, then you know that the work you're doing is serving its purpose. The second aspect that I feel that is very important as well is that as a leader, it is absolutely vital to always be open to learning. Because when I keep that awareness that I don't know it, you know, and that I need to learn at each step, that is what enables us to stay humble. And humility, I feel, is the hallmark of a real leader. Because when there is that humility, then at the end of the day, I think it was Madiba who put it very beautifully, when the job is done, it's not that I've done it, but we've done it.
Together.
And I think that is really what real leadership is about. And the third aspect as well that I feel that's so vital is that you as an individual, your conscience is always your guide. And, you know, no matter what the outer responses are, but you in yourself know whether you came from a place of truth or not. And you need to have that honesty to actually listen to that voice of the conscience. Because very often what happens is that when we do see the discrepancy within us, we very easily justify it. And as long as we justify it, it's like we blind ourselves to it. And so the importance of really taking that time to almost to listen to the voice of your conscience. And I think to inspire this quality of awareness and value systems in leaders, one is by example that we from grassroots level can reflect a new way of being. I don't think we have to wait for it to happen from the top, but each one of us are leaders in our own right, and as we embody this new way of thinking and being, we begin to influence our environments, etc. But I think in some ways that without creating this awareness, I think the stress that's increasing today is going to lead to a point where leaders will have to start looking at themselves. Because the world we're living in now is very dynamic, it's very fast, it's very rapid. And because of various influences, the stresses are increasing. And it's almost like the stresses in itself is going to have to then become the trigger for that self-reflection. If you're not willing to do it from self-awareness, then the stress is going to force you to look at it. Yeah.
Thank you, sister. You're bringing out the important issue that we should all embrace, leading without titles, and really internalizing the fact that as we are sitting here, we are all leaders in our own rights. Leading starts with self. So I'm picking out several values that you just mentioned: authenticity, humility, and being able to bring that to the fore as we serve others. Within the ecosystem, now I would like to see how we can link that. Yesterday there were issues to do with intergenerational, the gap that is there. How do we connect with the youth? Professor Catherine, how do we begin to engage and collaborate with the different generations, our young girls, our young women, our girls, and indeed even the boys and the men? What kind of measures should we put in place? What kind of thinking should we have?
First of all, I urge you to be strategic. Don't just chat and wonder, oh, the weather is fine. No, be strategic. Be strategic so that you understand the contours of a problem. So that if you have to act on it, you can act without fear or favor. Otherwise, you know, in the women's movement, we meet like this. Yeah, we have met 1,000 of us. And we have no idea how to enter policy. Hello. Huh?
Thank you, Professor Catherine. That is my important signpost to the next question I wanted to pose to Dr. Rampere. So we do have all these global, continental, and regional instruments, protocols, and pieces of agenda, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2063, SADC Gender Protocol, and we are here. We want to see the kind of tweaks we would want to make to the women's movement. What kind of alignments should we begin to think about to make sure that this is making sense for all of us?
I think we need, and I think Professor is correct in saying we need to be strategic. There are lots of alliances we've got. And we tend to follow the next wave and the next wave. But if we go back to the focus of this discussion, the ecosystem, let's ask ourselves, we now live in a world that's heating up. And Africa is the cradle of humanity, and unfortunately, we are the ones that are going to be impacted most strongly by climate change. And we have the youngest population profile in the world, median age of 19.4, but we are led by the oldest leaders in the world, 65 years. And so the entry point ought to be asking the right questions. How do we, as Africa, the mother continent, get to focus on Mother Earth that we have so abused? And what is the source of abuse? My sister here talked about the capitalism is inherently iniquitous. It consumes resources without any care about crossing the planetary boundaries. And it instills the values that are opposite to the values of Ubuntu and humility and all of that. You have to compete. You have to be standing there and really looking like you are in charge. Now, we in Africa, and this are we. That's why I started by saying this is a revolutionary platform. We have to ask fundamental questions about what ecosystem are we going to shape? How do we reimagine Africa and the world as the place which will live in harmony with nature? How do we make sure that the economic system we forge as leaders in our own rights, but as business people, as academics, is not simply following the global economic system, which is iniquitous? And I speak because I've come from there. And so we need to think about a new way of being in socio-economic relationships. And Ubuntu is a great guide. I'll keep coming back to Ubuntu. The original wisdom which made human beings evolve in Africa was understanding that you can only thrive if you make sure that everything else around you thrives. And that is what is so important. So how do we get young people to engage in these conversations? I've said to my daughters and sons that I've met here today, please do not be dragged by the flow of the river. Ask the question, what kind of person do I want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? How do I reimagine my country? How do I reimagine my continent? How do I reimagine the world? And then you are able, it gives you so much energy because you are not saying what's wrong with the world. You are reimagining the world you want. You are dreaming, and dreams are wonderful. They take you to Hong Kong, to Latin America. You are sitting here, but the dream has taken you. So we need to, as leaders in this beautiful platform built by our beautiful sister, we need to use AWID as a platform for reimagining. reimagining our relationships at the personal family level, reimagining our relationships in the workspace, reimagining our relationships at country level, and our relationships as a continent. And when we do that with the wisdom of the placenta and the wisdom of Ubuntu, we will and we have the obligation to lead the world to a new civilization. A civilization of harmony between human and nature, and between nature and human beings. And human beings will then have less reason for conflict. Because when you think about it, there is enough if we share.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ampere. Fatima, Mildred, would you like to add to that? What are the kind of solutions we need to be crafting now?
Okay, so maybe the only thing I want to add is, I think we must be very clear on how we think the world changes. And we don't need to go to universities to figure that out. We've lived the history of dramatic change on our continent. How did slavery end? How did colonialism end? How did apartheid end? It's by building movements of the poor. So as much as this conference is revolutionary, let us not be deluded by thinking conferences change the world. This is the place where we get new ideas from each other, we fortify our struggles, and we live inspired. But the hard work is really, often in my country, people talk about the women's movement of South Africa. There isn't a women's movement of poor black women in my country. There's a collective of NGOs, some of us are black-led, some of us are black staff, but actually the hard work about challenging patriarchy is in movement building. So that's the conversation we need to have. That work on the personal is important, but that doesn't change structures. Otherwise, we're going to get into an Oprah frame of mind, where we think that if you just work on yourself, the world becomes a better place. So I'm not saying don't work on ourselves. I think that work is important for us as feminists. But I'm saying the real change in the world happens because the men that rule our world are not going to give it up because we ask them to. There's going to be a contestation of power, and that is movement building. So part of our conversation here together has got to be, how do we return from where we came from and start that hard work of movement building? And this is where I think total shutdown has been exceptional in the post-apartheid era. Because for a long time, NGOs spoke about these things in NGO spaces, but it was the young women of total shutdown who had the vision to say, let's take this to the street and open it up. And this is why for the first time in our history, we've seen, in my country, the equivalent of 4 Boeing loads of women die every year as a result of gender-based violence. More than half of those women at the hands of men who claim to love them, partners, lovers, husbands. If a plane crashed in my country tomorrow, what would happen? The flags would fly at half-mast. Government would look for someone to hold accountable. We'll look for ways to make sure that it doesn't happen again. 4 Boeing loads of women go down in this country every year. Nothing has ever happened. And what the total shutdown movement achieved through that march was forcing government to say there's a crisis. That's the first point, to get the vocabulary of crisis in the national discourse and to say, let's get together and make a plan. And that's where we are now. So it's quite an exciting moment for us as women in our country. We've never had this in our new South Africa, where all the sectors are coming together and say, there's a crisis. We're going to make a plan that we all agree to, and we're going to resource it, because that's the litmus test, right? So we're asking South African women in particular, listen to Sona, listen to the budget speech next year. The real litmus test of the commitments of the gender-based violence is whether we're going to see the money in the budget. Because we don't want political rhetoric about the commitment to our lives. We want to see government put the money in the Tutuzela centers that keep women alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. Before I take this conversation to the delegates, to our distinguished sisters, just one last question I'm posing to you, Mildred. Within this context, what brand or identity of feminism or women's movement should we begin to champion from this point?
So we can't say feminism or women's movement in the same breath. Yesterday, Memory Kachambwa, who is my executive director, challenged us and asked, why is feminism taken as a dirty word? But before we go to the definition, I always wonder that when women sit in a group like this to challenge the power that has discriminated upon them, what do they think they're doing? They're challenging patriarchy. What do you think that defines us? That is called feminism. When you challenge patriarchy, when you challenge power, cultural bondage, patriarchal social norms that have held women under bondage and discriminated, that is challenging patriarchy, is at the thrust of the feminism ideology. So ladies, let's all be feminists. But we cannot just push that without the benefit of understanding scenarios. We are cognizant and aware and very alive to the fact that we are women in Africa, diverse in the countries where we are from, diverse in cultural issues, leadership issues and everything. Our consciousness to understand that will help us forge forward a leadership that is transformational, that is beyond just talking on a panel like this. I want to say, the Igbo of Nigeria, I love that the saying they have. They say that she who has not traveled thinks her mother's cooking is the best. And then she travels, then she learns that there are other mothers outside who also cook. And they cook very well. So the challenge for me, I say, in putting together our leadership in one basket that can move the continent forward, is first of all with understanding of who we are and the wisdom of our placenta. Please, to me, that's my reference point. And then secondly, opening up our understanding and knowledge of our own countries where we live in. I've been following the news in SABC. I know that the former mayor of Cape Town has started her own party and she's a woman standing, and I know the politics involved are many. I know that there have been very serious deaths where women are actually protesting and everything. My question is, where is the transformational aspect of how this news ends if the women in this room are the transformational leaders that we crave for? I challenge you to ask me for a conversation and tell me, Mildred, this is a nice dress. Where did you buy it? So that I can tell you I bought it in Dakar, Senegal, somewhere, West Africa, down at the other corner. And you tell me, where is that on the map? So that I can tell you about the women of Dakar. But not only me telling you about the women of Dakar, I urge that when you read a bizarre story about women being attacked or homicides on the increase in Rwanda, you might want to read a little bit more and say, but women are suffering there. How do we come together to support them? What finishes us in our leadership as women is that we want to box ourselves into silos. Southern African women, I want to newsflash, we fought against apartheid with you since I was a child without coming to South Africa. I didn't know it. We all knew the national anthem. We all knew the liberation songs. We all knew the struggles. We know the history. We know the quotes of South African leaders by heart. Believe me when I tell you. So I don't have to be South African to understand your cause. So leadership, in my view, means that you look at the ecosystem in your country. Look at the paths that you can challenge and how. And believe me, you can challenge them all. If we are the people who discovered fire, we can challenge it all. And to me, that's the first revolution. You know, Africans discovered fire. How come they forget that important fact? Because we discovered it, and then with the cold on the other side. But anyway, my point is that we need to understand really who we are and then reach out to the others. You can't be closed as South African women. Total shutdown went across globally because if Femnet is pushing to 47 countries and globally, because we have both diaspora and regional support and followers, and we were pushing the African Union on your behalf. Because we said, look at down south, look at what is happening. We didn't have to have a contract or a letter of agreement to say you will pay me $100 for doing this. No. The only contract we had with you is because we are women and we understand the struggle. Solidarity and movement building. We have no choice. We have to build solidarity. The women, if you may allow me to just say, the women who fought for freedom in this country, those who are celebrated are few. Those who fought for it are so many. They remain faceless, they remain nameless. We know that from our countries in Africa, the women pushed themselves even on the front line. and offered their bodies so that they can shield the men as they fought. How much more of sacrifice? So nobody counts the women who died on the trenches. Nobody names them. But our history in the struggle must name the women and bring them up and say, wait a minute. The women fought as well. The women soldiers of Dahomey, who would have known in that century that there was an entire army of women alone? And they said, we are going to fight this. So my sisters, there are no two ways. We have to go down to understand the genesis and wisdom of that placenta and then connect it so that we move forward.
Thank you, Mildred. I see that it's getting hot in here. I would like to take this discussion to you now. There are two microphones at this, on the two aisles. I'll allow for 5 on this aisle, 5 on that aisle. Quickly. So you'll be very brief. You will say your name, the country you're coming from, and ask your question. Don't touch or move away the microphone. If you'd like, you can actually state who you are directing your question to. Right? 5. 5 here, 5 there. Those of you who were here yesterday, you saw what happened. Eh? We don't want to get into that mode. Yeah, 5, 5, excellent. Please, go ahead, that end.
Okay. My question is, I guess, addressed to whoever on the panel feels that they can respond. My name is Taweni Gondwe Klava. I'm Malawian by birth and South African by citizenship. Everything sounds very sort of intellectual, a little bit. It's touched me in a lot of ways as well. There are a lot of statements that are made that are quite emotive. The piece that I'm missing is the practical part where you can change your own home and the contact between this topic and the place where every single woman here has got influence, which is in the home. Because it all sounds like you want to go and make an impact on the world, but actually kids are out of control. So we'd like to understand what are your ideas around how we make this practical and very real in our lives and not hypothetical and theoretical.
Okay, thank you.
Good day, my name is Numpo Melomelapi from South Africa. My question is to Prof. Catherine Hoppers. During your presentation, you didn't touch on capitalism. I just want to find out what constitutes freedom when we live in a capitalist society that continues to exacerbate inequality and class struggles. It breaks African households and state that we are poor because you are lazy, or else our mothers wake up 2 o'clock in the morning to go to work and they don't earn enough money. And then we also discussed the fourth industrialization, but to date young people are unemployed, and now how will we be introducing a fourth industrialization will once again be capitalist and exclude young people and exploit people. And keeping in note that capitalism in of its nature never dies, but metamorphosizes into a bigger monster. So how then will we challenge capitalism in Africa?
Excuse me, you are directing that question to Dr.
Catherine
Rampere?
Hoppers and Mam Rampele.
All right. Okay. Dr. Rampere, you got that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Next.
Thank you so much. My name is Mpoma Ratani from Lesotho. Most of the speakers have been talking about the values. For me, hate is not an African value. What will be your opinion on, like, the women, the homosexuals women, like maybe the bisexual women and the lesbian women or the transgender women are being discriminated against by other women here in Africa in the name of homosexuality being an African. For me, homophobia is the one which is an African, but homosexuality is quite African. So us as Africans, we find that we are fighting for gender equality, but the women who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of the equality status sometimes become the opposition. What would be your opinion on that? Because they hate them so much, and hate is not an African value. What would be your advice on that one? Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings to the House and the panel. My name is Guhlego Nkentuli and I'm from South Africa. I think that as a political activist, we need to be very honest with ourselves. In that political parties have failed us. The discourse on trying to fight using the color of our skin has failed us. Fighting as poor people and trying to say no, but we are the poor class, the working class, has failed us.
Ask your question?
Yes. I think that my question is directed to the whole panel. In saying that, can the next revolution and successful revolution be led by women? Because, like you said, the placenta is from us. Every boy child, every girl child is coming from us. Why can't we just say, this is a woman-led revolution? What would be the limitations? And then the second question would be...
One question, sorry, so that we can take on
Okay.
the others. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, let's just be fair.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good day, beautiful ladies. My name is Puti Sylvia Mapalamdaka. Mapalamdaka, two surnames, because I love my father. I think he's the first person who saw me before.
Ask your
Thank
question,
you very
ma'am.
much.
Yes.
The question here is, we all talk about the gender-based violence, like as they mentioned here. How do we name and shame these perpetrators in Africa? How do we name and shame them? Like coming out with a policy where you find that a person who did this is named and shamed.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last one on this side.
Amandla! My name is Tulam Sindo Legodi Rapotu from the province of Peace, Limpopo. I just want to talk to the panel to thank them very much because I feel empowered.
Thank you, sister. I acknowledge that. Ask your question, please, so that we can
The question
wrap it up.
is, as we are running in the fast lane, what is it that we are going to do from here? What is it that we are going to do in terms of ensuring that in our next elections, we are having a woman president? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, this side. 5 of you, please, go ahead.
My name is Vimbaishe Mushaburi and I'm from Zimbabwe. In the last election, I ran for office, and my greatest challenge, or other greatest challenge that us women faced, is the fact that, it's going to lead to the question, is the fact that, do we support each other as women? Sister Fatima mentioned the fact that when we get into office as women, we then do not come back and help the other women. But first of all, did we get each other into parliament? That's the question. Did the man get us into parliament? And secondly, please, Sister Mildred, help us, teach us on how we can use the placenta idea to connect each other and start supporting each other from there. Because we can then complain while we are inside that, oh no, we don't have equal representation, or no, we don't have, the equal voice, we don't have a voice, but it begins with us supporting each other. Teach us on that one.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'm Rosemary Sishimba from Zambia. I work on aging issues, and my question is on values, especially the values of young people. How do we harmonize the talents of the young people, the experience of the older people together? I'm asking this question because in Zambia, we have a problem. When an older person is appointed to a position of power, I just want them to understand. Young people start saying, you are putting old people in positions of power. So how do we deal with this situation?
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Mujang Gugumbi. I'm told I originate from Congo. My question is to my sister Catherine and Mampela. I can't see Mampela. There you are. My question is as follows. You know, what would stop us from working on a project between this year and next year when we have the whole continent represented here, which goes like this? As you know, the Constitutive Act, one of the founding principles is the promotion of gender equality. That's the African Union Constitutive Act. And Article 30 of the Constitutive Act is the one that we call red carding countries. So African countries can be suspended from the African Union if they do not follow their constitution, if there's an unconstitutional handover of power. Now, women form more than half the population of these countries. So I want to ask you,
yes,
what would it take for us to amend Article 30 of the AU Constitutive Act to say any country that discriminates against half its population should be suspended from the AU?
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I am Loyiso Salisa from the Total Shutdown Movement. I would like to pose my question to everybody on the panels, to all the elders on the panel, and focusing specifically on what my spirit leader, Usis Mildred, had to say about us remembering all women and showing solidarity to other countries as well. This is leading to my question about, I haven't heard even today anything about the LGBT, the women who are in the LGBTQIA community. And I want to know, because we are an intersectional movement, what does this movement of AWID, what are they going to do about not leaving behind the lesbian girl continentally? What are they going to do about the transgender women? Because they need to be part of this, of the ecosystem, the fourth industrial revolution as well. So if I could get an answer on that, please, on inclusivity.
Thank you.
My name is Quadrants from South Africa. We heard that we are led by capitalism values. And we also reminded that we needed to go back to our placenta and find out how can we as women gathered together here start unpacking those values that the placenta hold and put them on a list where we will share them with the young generation and be able to voice them out and challenge this capitalism that is leading us in the wrong way as African.
Thank you.
Jina langu ninaitwa Fredina Saidi, ninatokea Tanzania.
Sorry, just a minute. Our panelists, if you could put on your headphones so that you can get her.
Ninaitwa Fredina Saidi, natokea Tanzania. Swali langu mimi nataka kuuliza, tumezungumzia kuhusu masuala ya kuweka kumbukumbu za watu waliofanya vizuri, waliopigana. Lakini mwaka juzi 2016 tulikuwepo na sauti ya wanawake waliotuwakilisha kupanda mlima wa Kilimanjaro, kudai madai ya haki za kumiliki ardhi na madai mengine. Watu hao waliweza kutupazia sauti na wakapanda mlima Kilimanjaro, na matokeo ya kumiliki ardhi baadhi ya maeneo yamefanikiwa. Sasa hatujasikia kwamba hawa kumbukumbu hizo tunazotaka tusome historia yetu kama wanawake, tunaisoma vipi na lini itaingizwa tukajivunia kupitia mkutano tena kama huu kuona vitu ambavyo tumefanya. Naomba nishie.
Asante. That's a hot pack of questions, eh? What are your ideas to make all this that we're discussing here practical? For some, it is sounding intellectual. How do we break this down? Who would like to take it up? Dr. Ampere?
I don't think in a big gathering such as this we can get to the nitty-gritty practical parts. But I think what we can do is to agree on certain frameworks. The first thing I would say, and I think my sister has brought this fantastic concept of the placenta, which takes us beyond even the current body, because the placenta recognizes those who are still to be born. I think we need to, first of all, agree that each one of us sitting here, as Sister has said, we all need to pay attention to the inner person. There is no escape from that. You cannot be an effective leader without harmonizing the mind, the body, the spirit, and the ecosystem around you. The second thing is, it's very important that that harmony represent the core values of Ubuntu, which is human dignity, respect, equality, and all those things that connect the past, the here, and tomorrow. And that's important because that then helps us to relate to people in our homes. That's where the intergenerational conversations about what these values mean have to start with the mother, the father, whatever the constitution of the family. And this is where I think is so important, the issue that has been brought over and over by the questioners. The issue of sexuality and the different ways in which we all have been created to express that. Now, I agree, this idea that homosexuality is un-African is a reflection of ignorance. If you go back into history, you will find great warrior women or men and great people, poets and others, who were recognized as people who were part of what today we'll call the LGBT community. But they were not regarded as a threat because the societies were so comfortable with the idea of diversity and unity all at the same time. That brings me to the fourth point I want to take on, which is the issue of what kind of economic system we should be working together to build. And I think this is where my sister comes in with the issue of when we get into the systems area, we need to mobilize. There's no other way. I can have the most wonderful family if the village is not brought into a community of families that care for every child as their own, we're not going to make progress. And when those communities link together, begin to articulate their reimagined future. And that reimagined future is not just at the interpersonal level. It's also at what kind of system. I'm very sad that South Africa had the opportunity in 1994 to establish a different socio-economic system. We chose to sustain that which was built for 10% of the population. And then we went cap in hand in BEE to get this little slice and so on. I think that's where corruption was built into our body politic. And I'm asking that we as an intergenerational group of women across the continent start asking those tough questions. What kind of economic system would serve the fundamental values of Ubuntu, and how do we begin to build that? And we know NGOs have a bad name, but many of them have experimented with how you do those things in small spaces. But those ideas need to be elaborated wider. I want to end on this question that was raised about the how we celebrate women. And I think even our chair indicated this, that we have so much to say about our heroes and so on. And then we've got very little, almost like the garnish on top of the cake of women who are heroes and who were freedom fighters. But this doesn't start now. Yesterday, when Lerato was talking about the warrior queens of Africa, many of us didn't even recognize who she was talking about. So I would like to suggest that one of the things we as Awis should promote is knowledge of our African history, not post-colonial history, and knowledge of our languages, which are dying because we are learning English and French. And knowledge, and I think we need to agree here, this is a group that can say, we need to advocate for the teaching of Kiswahili as a common African language. Language carries culture. If we develop a shared platform, we'll be able to mobilize easier for a shared future that will make us all proud and make our grandchildren proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ampere. How do we unpack the values of the placenta? Mildred.
Please allow me to ask my sister, my young sister, please if you could come up, because there's no other way for me to explain it, I think, than to demonstrate it to you. And you're wearing heels, so I don't want you to fall.
Okay, I'll take them off.
Because sometimes we want to complicate the things that are actually not complicated. They're not complicated. And so I want you to think about it as I do this very brief demonstration. Because I can't open up my tummy now to show you my placenta. And you know, I can't take you where it was buried, but I know where it was buried. You've asked a very important question. I need you, Vimbai, to hold on to me. And hold on to me really tightly. And as I talk, I need you to move back with the pressure, with your feet. With your feet, not my hand, but with your feet. Because if I start here, where we are together, Vimbai, we are together in Birchwood, talking about solidarity and women's movement and building. But Vimbai is going back to Zimbabwe, still broken, that women don't stand with her when she runs for office. Move back. And yet I'm still holding her because we're in the solidarity. Move here, just really gently, Vimbai. You see, our young people move really fast. So Vimbai is still broken because she wants to run for office, but women are not supporting her. She thought women would automatically just rally behind her. She's broken. So Vimbai, move back, is also from the LGBTI community. The women in Birchwood told her, we're in solidarity, we're in the women's movement. Move back a little bit. Just move with your feet. I'm holding you. So I'm still holding Vimbai. But she's from the LGBTI community, and women in Zimbabwe think it's against culture. It's against religion. I'm still holding her. I'm still holding her, and I'm telling her I'm holding you. I don't believe in your LGBTI nonsense that comes from the West, but I'm still holding you. So Vimbai is still moving, and really moving, and almost falling, because at some point it becomes too much, and I leave her. And she falls. The placenta doesn't rest until it pushes out what it needs to push out. The placenta doesn't rest until it is cut so that that life can yell and life can begin. Why are we pretending to be feminists? And when Vimbai comes with issues, quote to quote, LGBTIQ, we do not even understand how she wants to run. Oh, she's sleeping with all the men in parliament, but they never say the men are sleeping with many. They just say the women, or they say, and so when that starts, we the women who are supposed to be rallying behind her say, but look at how she's wearing very short dresses showing off her. What kind of girls are they? And we leave her. We lie.
Thank you, Vimbai.
We lie. So for me, really, the push and the urge is for us to really redefine the solidarity we crave. We cannot claim to be feminists. Feminism is egalitarian. It is inclusive. I have no right whatsoever to judge you for what you stand for. I just have to actually accept and allow you to be in my space and to be okay and comfortable in what you're in. I want to quickly push into issues, religion and culture that we push into. I know that Christians can quickly pull the Bible and tell you, God is love. Love God. And then love everybody else the way Jesus tells you to love. You know, Jesus didn't tell you, love only the women who are not lesbians. He said, just love everyone. To my sisters who are Muslims, we know that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was asked, who is your neighbor? And he said, your neighbor is 40 houses ahead of you, 40 houses behind you, 40 houses on your side, and 40 houses. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not say that your neighbor is only the woman who actually does not mix with LGBTIQ, that you're only the woman who just said the houses ahead of you. Didn't even say it has to be Muslim houses. So I think we need to really think about how we unpack this. And for me, solidarity is not only a word. Solidarity is actually not a word. It's an action. Yes. It's showing up to stand with you when you need me. It's not a word. It's an action.
That's a good signpost, Mildred. Very important. It's a good signpost to my next question, to the next question that someone posed. How do we name and shame perpetrators in Africa? How do we learn to practically do that within the context of the patriarchy that exists, that is deeply entrenched? How do we begin to name and shame? Fatima, would you like to take that up?
I don't think it's that complicated. I think we must name and shame them for who they are, and we must, there's a lot of emphasis in South Africa now on due process. You have to take men through a legal process before you can name and shame them. But there's no consideration for the due process for women who suffer at the hands of these men. So I don't subscribe to this notion of that we have to wait out the due process, because while that process runs, it's caused women around that man is still at risk of that very same man. So I think name and shame is not that complicated. We must do it and live with the consequences of it, because the reality is we've seen now, I don't know if other countries follow that in South Africa, there's a crisis of sexual harassment in the social justice sector, in our homes, no? In NGOs and movements. Men are sexually harassing and sexually assaulting their comrades. And there's a lot of pressure on us to follow due process, to be kind, to be careful, to give men due process, while at the same time young women are being run out of those organizations because in the name of due process. So for me, I say name them. Let us deal with the consequences of that.
Thank you. Professor Catherine, how do we harmonize the talent of our young people so that we bridge the gap with the experience of the older people?
That is a tough question. I think we have to recall that we are human first before we are girls or boys or something. We are human first. If we connect with that, the reactions that we are busy confronting now about the effects of patriarchy and so on and so forth, we will take them as a phase only, because reactions are just reactions. What happens if you solve that problem? It is like I said in my opening. Please name what you are for. not what you are against. Because sometimes we women, we have a long memory of almost hatred. We'd never forget. This, this man did this to me, the other man did this to me, and so on and so forth. We never forget. So be careful what you communicate to your children. Be careful. Maybe you'll implant your own sense of humiliation to your children. Be careful.
Sister, thank you, Professor. Sister Daya, would you like to add?
I think one aspect that's very important, especially when trying to create a greater sense of inclusivity with different sectors of our community and young people as well, is the importance of listening. I think so often when we talk of intergenerational, the older, yes, I value your experience, but sometimes in the attitude, it's that we know more. And it's a different world now. And I think young people, if given a very objective space of really being listened to, we'll be able to learn from them, number one. But number two is that it gives space then to bring in the wisdom of the past and past experience. But we have a tendency of wanting to come with, we know, so you listen, you know? And so it's about shifting the discourse in the other way around. And that will help, because I think it's a different world. It's a different way in which they interact and engage, and we're not always clued up about it. But they have something to share, they have some wisdom to offer, and it's about being open to listen.
So as older leaders, there are some adjustments we have to make.
Yeah.
Dr. Rampere?
I want to come back to the name and shame and my sister's question about the 30%, the Article 30, and whether we shouldn't amend it so that we can throw those countries out of the EU that are not compliant. I share the view that we should not protect wrongdoers. And I believe we need, and I think it was you who started by saying that one of the problems in South Africa is that we've got this beautiful constitution, and in fact the world has got this human rights framework. But how much energy goes into teaching it? From the school, preschool, all the way, in our homes, in our churches, very little. And so our sons and daughters grow up without a sense of this gender equality we're talking about. What does it mean in practical terms? And because we haven't embedded it in our educational system, we haven't embedded it in our discourse, even in some homes. And so I think we need to strengthen the civic education element of our national education systems so that when someone knowingly crosses that barrier, we can name that person. Because I have a problem with shaming. Because when you shame somebody, you shame yourself. Because, you know, we are so connected.
Yes.
That, and you know it as a parent, even when you are really angry with your child. You feel sad after saying something that was not kind. So I think the transparency is important, and the holding people accountable is important. But naming and shaming, I have some difficulties. The issue of the Article 30 is even more complicated. Because those articles and those principles and those policies of our countries, of the AU, are never made part and parcel of normal discourse. And so how is the constituency of Bochum going to be able to report infringements of that Article 30 when they don't even know, A, that it exists, B, what it says? So again, I come back to this. And I think we, as this multitude of women who have this capacity to connect and who have the responsibility as the bearers of the seed, in addition to being the placenta that holds that seed until it comes life, we have a responsibility. I think one of the practical things that can come out of here is making sure we mobilize for civic education in our countries, so the values we talk about are embedded in the education system. And also that we make sure that we hold our parliaments accountable. Because our parliaments don't even know about this Article 30. And if they do, they wouldn't tell you what does it mean? And how do they hold the executive accountable for performance on this? And so I think we are some way off before we can start using the punishment. Let's first invest in the education of our beautiful people of this beautiful continent.
Thank you, Dr. Rampere. Fatima, you look like you've got something burning to share.
Yeah, no, I think these things get exciting right at the end when we start disagreeing. So I do want to say that the issue of shaming is that if you don't do that, you're actually complicit. Because those men who rape and assault us are not of us. I don't want to protect them. And when I don't say their name publicly, I'm making another woman vulnerable to that person's predatory behaviors, which is why I have no guilty feelings. I've got no contradictions. If it happens, I think we must name them and put them out there.
Okay, thank you.
You asked a question other than that?
No, I just wanted, you seemed like you were agitating
Yes,
to
I was
add on to
burning about
what
that issue.
Dr.
Thank you.
Rampere was saying. Mildred, can the next revolution be led by a woman?
It already is being led by women.
Here we are.
I think we cannot even pretend. That is why we see today that the political shift globally is shifting to the far right. They are so afraid because of the egoistic, sexist, anti-women attributes that they have to impose this shift globally, because when the North sneezes, we catch a cold. But what I need to tell you is that maybe perhaps at this time as the revolution unfolds, it is time for us African women to stand in solidarity with the women in the US, to stand in solidarity with the women in Brazil, as they're being attacked by the powers that have taken over, and the shift is lying down on them in a way that could not even describe us 100 years ago. Perhaps, therefore, it is time that we showed the women in the far north that solidarity for the African women, no matter how long it took, is what actually helped the continent regain its independence. I think the reason why, when we say the future is female, it's not just an empty rhetoric. When you buy your little girl who's 7 a t-shirt that says, "Girl power, women can conquer the world," you picked it because you believed it, not because color yellow was cute. You believed the words, and you want the little girl to grow up believing in it. The revolution, we've seen the innovations across the globe. We are seeing the shift in the leadership of critical regional spaces. We are seeing science and major innovations being taken over by women. Last month, I flew over with a captain who was female, co-pilot who was female, an entire crew that was female. The plane was female. think if we don't see it as women, that the time has come for us to offer a different paradigm shift as to how things are done, then we lose the moment. Adding on to naming and shaming, look, sometimes you don't even have to declare that this man has done this. You have a law that if in the Constitution of South Africa says that in the Bill of Rights, if today the government has a right to provide food, shelter, and security, and my children are sleeping hungry, do I have a right to challenge the government and say, wait. The Constitution says you can feed me. Am I able to do that? Do I know the mechanisms to go about testing the Constitution? Sometimes the law can automatically name and shame for you. But do we know the law? So the challenge for us as leaders is to know the law and unpack it to our constituents and communities down there so that they can use the law. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to do things differently today. So for those of you who are agitating to say something, as we wrap up, from that section there, this section, I think 2 people in the middle, that section there, think about what you're capturing here, the conversations we are curating here, so that we can, as we wrap up, we can capture your high-level takeaways. Did you get that? Your high-level takeaways, what you've learned from the conversation. So I'll take one person from there, 2 people from the middle, 1 person from there. The last question for our panelists today, circling back to this whole theme, this topic, moving towards a new value-based ecosystem for inclusive development. Fast forward, November 2020. What are the future trends? What kind of conversations should we be having about this? Because I do get despondent sometimes that we tend to be moving in circles. So forward-looking, futuristic views, what kind of conversations should we be having in 2 years' time? I'll start with you, Professor Catherine, and up to Sister on this side.
For me, what we need to do is to not just organize ourselves, but organize ourselves around some strategic action. For example, if it is networking within the country or within the continent or something, or within the world, let us be specific. And we meet annually. Let us review what has happened during these 12 months. If it is adopting the wisdom of the placenta, well, we'll meet next year and we'll ask ourselves what has happened since Johannesburg. You get me? Let us be as strategic as possible so that we hold ourselves accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Ampere?
What I believe we should be having, the kind of conversations we'll have in 2020 will depend on what we leave here and do. And I have said this to my daughters and sons that I met in the last 2 days. Organize yourselves into, as we have seen, that it is possible. The shutdown hashtag was able to mobilize a whole movement of young people to really say what they believe in. We can use technology to have conversations about, first of all, what kind of Africa do we want to see in 2020 with what kind of conversations and with what kind of leaders. We have been challenged here to identify women who may be running for office and how we might support them, but not unconditionally, with a very clear mandate. If we support you, this is what we are going to hold you accountable for. The third area, I believe, is this issue of the planetary ecosystem. We must not be blind as Africa and believe that climate change, as Trump says, is some imaginary. It is here. I live in Cape Town. We are living it. So I would hope we can have conversations in 2020 about particularly young people, because it's your future that we have borrowed resources from your future. What questions, tough questions, will you have asked your leaders about what they are doing to prepare for a future which is more secure, with an ecosystem that's more sustainable, and that includes challenging the assumptions that there is only one global system, which is the capitalist system. It's failed, and it's going to fail some more. We'll also have to have conversations about different models.
Thank you, Dr. Ampere. Fatima?
For me, I would hope that we'd be back with much more practical strategies around this so-called fourth industrial revolution. I think it was one of the panelists yesterday in the opening